1. So back in junior high, I was on the volleyball team. I live in a very rural community. Every year, the school would do a little fundraiser for all the sports teams at this tiny park. It had a couple makeshift booths, kitchen area, and stage. Each team would come up with a game, and the players would take turns running that booth. In those days, I was attached at the hip to my one friend in particular, who I'm still close with. I shall name her Chris. Both of us played sports and attended this event together. Her mom dropped us off at the park and was to pick us up after the event was over so we could help with cleanup. Both our working shifts were early, so we had a lot of downtime. We danced the night away, and right before the event was over, we decided to play football with some of our friends. The park is basically a bunch of fields and trees separating the different field segments. There is a parking lot when you first enter the park where everyone was parking that night. Directly in front of the parking lot is the location for all the booths. This whole setup is on top of a big hill, and at the bottom of this hill is where we played football, because we had just enough lights from the booth area to see. On with the story. I was picked up as a sitter for the first game. I get bored easily, and noticed my dad's first cousin was walking around the parking lot. He is on the rescue squad and was basically patrolling it. Now, this man isn't someone I've seen often in my life, but enough that I know who he is, and he knows me. Right before this event, my parents went through a divorce. This man and his wife picked up some furniture with my mom for her new home. They were literally with us the entire day about 2 weeks before this event. The following conversation just gets creepier the older I get. I walked up to cousin and said, "Hey, how are you?" He responds with, "Hey girl," which is a very usual response for him, and wraps his arm around my shoulders. Again, very normal behavior for him, no red flags. We make small talk, and he asks polite questions about my family that I politely answer. The whole time we were talking, he asks normal adult questions, and I bring up the furniture he moved into my house. This is where things got weird. This whole time he is walking me around these cars with his arm around my shoulders. It's a decent-sized lot, and I realize we're heading to the far corner about 2 car lengths, until we reach darkness and a grove of woods that circles down around this park. I stop, but he keeps gently guiding me towards this grove of trees. It's weird, and I'm starting to sense some red flags. His grip has also tightened up a bit, but at the time I was just confused about what's happening. I put my arm around his lower back and sort of spin us around so we get a few feet back towards the center of the lot. I've surprised him a little, but when we regain our footing he just stops moving and stands there, arms still around me. At this point I keep saying my friends are waiting and I need to go, yet he just keeps talking. I'm no longer letting him guide me around, and just when I'm about to kick him in the sunshine place, I hear Chris. She yells very loudly and comes running into the lot. She also makes a big show of getting her basketball coach's attention, saying we would be right over to do something. Finally, the death grip loosens and I walk away. My mind was reeling and I was so confused, but I wanted this guy to realize I was onto him. I turned once I was a safe distance and said that I would tell my dad he said hello. This goofy clown of a man straight blank says, "Who is your father?" I'm completely flabbergasted, but tell him my dad's name. Even though it was under bad lighting, I swear the color drained from his face. He just said, "Oh," and walked away. To this day, I have no idea who this man thought I was or why he was guiding me to the dark. We talked about both my parents and their divorce during our strolls, so it beats me. I did tell my mom about the situation, and she just said he is a goofball and to stay away from him. I know this isn't the creepiest, yet I just hope some younger person can learn something. I was too terrified of making a scene, and really think looking back on it I was in danger. My friend Chris later told me she had watched part of what happened and got creeped out because she realized where he was leading me, and that I was very clearly trying to walk away. That's why she ran over screaming and got adult attention. It's so weird because as a young person you're so afraid of causing a scene over nothing, but your safety is more important than that. If a situation ever makes you uncomfortable, do anything you can to get out. So, creepy relative, let's not meet again. Ever. 2. I work at a large crafting store in California, and have been there for a year and 8 months now. A little background before I explain what's going on is needed. So last year we hired a guy named Hayden. Hayden was a little quiet on the first day, but quickly became more talkative. and over the next couple of weeks started to never stop talking. He would constantly say weird shit. For instance, one day he was put in charge of building furniture. Our store carries stuff like furniture and home decor as well. He was apparently having difficulty assembling the table he was working on, and said something about cutting his wrists if he can't figure out how to put it together. Another time we were both working in the stockroom, and he kept talking about how much he looked like the Parkland shooter Nicholas Cruz. I'll admit, he did in fact look like that kid, which was creepy. I remember one day I had gotten off work and was waiting for my ride to pick me up, when out of nowhere Hayden walked up behind me. He just stood there with an awkward smile on his face, and I politely asked him, "What's up?" He said something to the effect of, "Oh, nothing much, just enjoying my lunch break. I'm thinking about going inside Taco Bell," right across the parking lot from our work, "and shanking someone." He pretty much laughed and said he was joking after saying that. When my wife picked me up, we saw him walking toward the Taco Bell, and he just flashed us this creepy-ass ear-to-ear smile. So the last straw for me was when he and I were assigned to work our spring freight and get it loaded up from the large U-boat. Our shift started at 7 a.m. and was over at noon. It was 11, and we still hadn't finished our task because Hayden just wouldn't stop goofing around. He would also work very slowly on purpose and would only take one item to the U-boat at once. Our boss came to where we were working and was upset that we weren't done yet. He told us we would both get written up if the job wasn't finished before we were off. I was pissed off at this point, and Hayden knew it. He seemed to feel bad for pretty much getting me in trouble and apologized. He then says something that really concerned me. He said that in the most serious tone I had ever heard him speak in since meeting him, "If I get fired, I'll shut this place up." He went on to say that he knew where all the emergency exits are, and would first shoot up all the cashiers and then move on to the other employees in the store. I'll admit that I didn't immediately report what he said, but it did have me on edge, and I kept thinking about what if. After some convincing from my wife, I finally did the right thing and informed my manager. They took a written report for me and contacted the police. After 2 more days of working with Hayden, he was fired and subsequently arrested for his threats. The week after he got arrested, my boss held a meeting with the entire staff and told everyone what happened. After everyone left the meeting, he pulled me aside and revealed to me what the police and Hayden talked about during the interrogation. I don't completely remember what was said, but Hayden apparently admitted that he had said what he said, and kept asking if I had been the one who reported him. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, I was working at the same store, still am, and I was heading to the break room for my final break, when I heard a voice from one of the aisles to the left. A man was standing next to the paint case, and I asked if I could get him some paint. While I was opening the case, he addressed me by name, which I immediately thought was weird, because I wasn't wearing my name tag on this particular day. Out of curiosity, I asked him how he knew my name, and he said it was just a lucky guess, to which I thought was BS, mainly because his tone of voice seemed sarcastic. The entire time I was getting his paint, he was staring at me with a smirk on his face. He then began to ask me questions about my name, which is the same name of a popular TV show character. He asked what year I was born, why my parents decided to give me that name, etc. At this point I started to walk away as I had other things to do, and the whole time I was walking away he was still trying to talk to me. I heard him yelling my name from 3 aisles down. I went and stood in the warehouse, until I thought he was gone. Later that same day, one of my co-workers asked me if I knew the guy who was buying the paint, and I told her I didn't. She told me that he had approached her and asked her all kinds of questions about me, like if I'm a good worker, and if she likes me as a co-worker. This is an ongoing issue too, and he's come into the store 2 other times, one being yesterday during my day off, and apparently asked where I was. I don't know for sure, but I suspect that this guy might be cousins with Hayden, as they sort of look alike and have similar mannerisms. Both look similar to the Parkland shooter and have that same creepy vibe. 3. This happened in the summer of 2010, when I was just entering my teenage years. My family took a trip to a really nice hotel in the city. I can't really remember why we decided to take the trip, but I remember a lot of family friends coming with and staying in adjacent rooms. I've never asked my parents, and it's not really important to the story. To preface, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat, and have always been. I'm a pretty skinny, fragile kid, so I get spooked pretty easily, even now. This, however, was almost definitely not me freaking myself out like I normally did. Looking back, I'm incredibly lucky I trusted my instincts. This hotel had a strange design to it. The lobby was actually on the 4th floor, not the bottom floor, which I found strange. To access the lobby, you had to use the elevator. There was no way for you to get to it from the stairs. This information would have been nice before everything happened, as you'll find out. The hotel was organized in a square shape. Every floor was lined with a balcony, and you could look down into the lobby and cafe area from your floor. Essentially, if you were walking to your room, you could be seen from anyone that was on your floor if they just stepped out of their room and looked around. I always was afraid I'd fall over the balcony and sail down 8 stories to my death. But they were high enough to the point where I wasn't too concerned for my safety. The first day or two was nice. My friends and I hung out and played cards all day, or we watched whatever was on TV. At night we'd explore the halls of the hotel and tell each other ghost stories. It was a really fun time, even though I didn't fully understand why we were there. On the 3rd day, though, things got strange fast. I woke up to the sound of screaming coming from outside my door. Now, because of the hotel's design I mentioned, sounds from the lobby would echo all the way up to the top of the building. So when I walked outside to investigate, I immediately looked over the balcony to see what the commotion was about. I saw a girl laying on the ground. Eggs and milk splattered everywhere around her. People were rushing to help her, and I heard multiple people telling each other to call 911. It seemed like the girl was unconscious. Maybe she had passed out or something. I scanned the lobby, and saw that my family and a couple of my friends were in the lobby getting breakfast, all staring at the event in front of them. I decided I'd rush down to meet them to find out what had happened. The elevator was on the opposite side of my floor, so I took the stairwell located right next to my room. We were on the 7th or 8th floor, so I knew I only had to take about 4 flights down. Not a big deal. I descended for a little while, looking for the number 4 on the wall or the letter L. I passed floor 5, ready to find a door to the lobby. I took about 2 more flights of steps before realizing that there hadn't been a door for the 4th floor, nor had there been a door for the 3rd or 2nd. Now at this point, I probably should have turned back, but I continued down because I was tired and didn't want to climb back up. There were some weird side hallways that went into pitch-black areas with a bunch of piping and wiring. And though I was curious to explore, I passed them by. I quickly hit the bottom floor, a dimly lit and cold room with cinder block walls and concrete floors. In front of me was a double set of doors. I hesitated at first, but I assumed that this was just another way back to the lobby, so I opened them and entered. Behind the doors was a massive warehouse-type room, probably the size of a smaller basketball stadium. The only light coming in was from the stairwell behind me, and I really wasn't able to see much. Stairs were stacked and covered in plastic wrap. Tables lined the wall, and in the distance, I thought I could see boxes stacked and lined against the wall as well. I was probably in the storage room for the hotel. I looked around and saw an elevator in the back of the room, so I made my way towards it. I closed the door to the stairwell and began to walk in the dim light. The room was super muggy and dusty, and it seemed like nobody had been down there in a long time. As I got closer to the elevator, I noticed it was a little bigger than the elevators in the lobby and other floors. I pressed the up button, but got no response. There was a card swiper next to the button. Must have been for employees only, I thought. I turned back towards the stairwell doors, making my way past the chairs and tables along the wall. When I got to the door, I gave it a tug. Locked. Of course. This is when things started to hit me, and I realized I was stuck in the dark, dusty basement of a hotel. I didn't have a phone, because my parents wouldn't let me get one until I graduated middle school. So I couldn't call anyone. Everyone likely assumed I was still asleep in the room, so I began to freak out, believing that nobody was going to look for me. I searched around the warehouse, thinking for other ways out. Some areas of the place were better lit than others. so I looked around in areas I could see first before starting on the darker side of the room. There was one other set of doors that I found, but it happened to be locked as well. I began to cry, scared that nobody would ever find me in this basement. I swear it felt like hours, but I think only a handful of minutes passed before I heard the door creak open. It wasn't the door from the stairwell, rather the second door I had found. A slim, middle-aged man in a lab coat came out of the doors. Now, if this was 21-year-old me seeing this man, I would be very confused as to why this guy was wearing a lab coat in a hotel. I was only 12 or 13 at the time, so I immediately was relieved at the sight of an adult who looked smart. I approached him, tears in my eyes, and he immediately looked surprised to see me, as you'd expect. "What are you doing down here?" he yelled. "I got lost on my way down to the lobby, and I've been locked in here. Do you have a key?" I was shaking, eager to get out of there. He didn't answer my key question, and instead he said, "I know a way out of here." He began to walk towards the doors with the stairwell, and I followed, relieved that somebody had finally come to save me. We approached the doors. I began to reach for the handle, but he continued walking. "Isn't it right here?" I asked him. I will never forget the look on his face when I said that. He looked nervous, and though it was dim, I could see sweat glistening from his forehead and behind his glasses. "No, this way," he said sternly. I continued to follow him, but I was now nervous myself. We had passed the door to the stairs and were now headed toward the darker side of the basement, away from the elevators. He looked like he had no clue where he was leading me, as he kept checking around him, almost as if he was taking in his surroundings for the first time. We turned a corner and began walking towards the boxes, a dead end. I immediately froze, realizing that something was very, very wrong. This guy had no idea where he was going, nor did he appear to work at the hotel. I said, my voice shaking, "Okay, where are we going?" He turned his head. "This way, follow me." I knew that there were no doors by those boxes. I had checked there first after I found out the stairwell door was locked. I want to thank whatever God is up there for gifting me with the idea I had next. I started yelling as loud as I could. I yelled again so loud I gave myself a headache. The man, irritated and plugging his ears, began yelling back at me, "What are you doing? Be quiet!" I continued to yell. I don't even remember how long I was yelling. Finally, the man snapped and began quickly walking towards me. I went in a full sprint towards the stairwell doors, hoping to God they'd somehow be magically open. He didn't run after me. He walked sternly behind me, muttering things like, "Stupid fucker," and other kind compliments. I was about 5 feet from the door when somebody burst through, my savior, a hotel janitor who had heard the screaming from the stairwell. He saw the situation, me and some random guy in a lab coat in a locked basement, and immediately told me to get behind him. The janitor asked me who the man was. I said I had no idea, that he had come in through the door on the other side of the room, so I pointed to the door. The janitor quickly radioed into the desk that he had found a child in the basement, and quietly, so that I wouldn't hear, said, "This man came from outside. Get security." Or something like that. The man in the lab coat started trying to argue with the janitor, claiming that he simply was looking for a bathroom. The janitor clearly wasn't buying it, and kept saying things like, "Wait till security gets here and talk to them about it." I was standing beside him the whole time, trying to take in what was happening, confused out of my mind. Eventually, an employee from the front desk arrived and took me back up the steps to the lobby, where I met with my family, who surprisingly had no idea I was missing. I told them the story, crying and shaking, and they hugged me tightly, thanking the employee over and over for their help. I never got to thank that janitor, though. Looking back now, I have absolutely no clue what that man was doing in the basement. I don't have any information as to what happened afterwards, or who he was. I know for a fact that the incident with the girl in the lobby was unrelated, something about low blood sugar. Not sure. I've thought about that day a lot, and the only explanation I can put together is that the door I found in the basement led to the streets of the city, where he must have wandered in from. I have no clue what his intentions were, why he was wearing a lab coat, or why he chose to pretend to know a way out. To be frank, this could have just been a huge misunderstanding of some sort. and I just chose a really bad time to get lost. But all I know for sure is if I hadn't screamed my lungs out, I might not have been telling this story the same way, or at all. So, strange man in a lab coat wandering around a dark, dusty hotel basement, let's not meet. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 458. Possibly my head's up my bum at this point. Well, hang on, that should be easy enough to check. Bear with me. Nope, that's not how we check it. Yeah, 458, there we go, well done me. Okay. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Getting there. Slowly, but I'm getting there with all the stories I've got to make. I'll be the 22nd by the time I'm done, I think, now. But that will give me time to go buy stuff for Christmas dinner and the like. Yay me. And with that, I think I'm going to head off because oodles more to do. Though I did manage to get stories for the more uplifting Christmas Day video I was hoping to make, so that's good. Okay, with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.